Are you ready for some smart, plain talk on politics, Israel, and the law? It's the Andrew Parker Show. Let's roll. Welcome to another episode of the Andrew Parker Show. We are at episode 470. Yes, indeed. It has been a heck of a ride. We've had some wonderful guests, people of interest to many, most, if not all, of you, our regular listeners. And whether you're a regular or not, go to theandrewparkershow.com. That's right, theandrewparkershow.com. Join us. That is subscribe. Yes, indeed. Follow us. Like right there. I think there's something called YouTube out there. You can find us there as well. And all of your favorite social media platforms. We're on them all. So today I want to talk about something I know little about, but I've got opinions on it. Doesn't matter whether, you're going to get an opinion, and that is technology. Just generally, the whole general topic of technology. I want to tell you, before we start with our very special and knowledgeable guest on the subject, because I wouldn't want to do a show on technology alone. It would be a short show with a lot of dead air. But I'll tell you that I have a degree, as some of you might know, from the Hubert H. Humphrey Institute of Public Affairs. It was a joint degree with my law degree, and one of my favorite classes in getting my master's at the Humphrey Institute was technology policy, taught by one Don Garon, who was a physicist, a nuclear physicist, and worked at the, as I recall it, the Livermore nuclear facility out in the desert out west for many, many years on nuclear weaponry. He learned quickly that technology can be wonderful and it can be absolutely disastrous. And he taught that in his course. I remember that he taught about walking into a grocery store and going to the coffee aisle and seeing about 80 different brands of coffee on the shelf. And then he started to roll that out into technology and how it is that we might need 80 different brands. Of course, capitalism plays in on that, but capitalism plays on technology generally and the direction that we go. We're going to talk with our special guest, Dan Garon, political raconteur, but also a technology buff, if not mega head, because he's got big thoughts on such subjects. A wonderful, really an exceptional background, starting with the time when he worked for yours truly, Andrew Parker. Yes, he did indeed, and he was fantastic. He went on to work out in Silicon Valley and lives in San Francisco, was with Zynga, Earth AI co-founder, and other workplace ventures. But most of all, he is now working on AI and different AI projects. And so I thought it would be interesting because I have certain opinions on the subject of AI. They may not entirely align with Mr. Garon's, but I thought it would be interesting to bring him on and let's talk about where we are headed, because it appears you better get on the bus or you'll be sucking the exhaust and be quite in trouble in the new economy. It's not an industrial economy, it's an AI economy. Dan Garon, welcome to the Andrew Parker Show.
Andy, you're Andy to me. It is.
Will be.
It's so great to be here. I've known you for, gosh, it's it's weird to say it. How many years?
Yeah, it's got to
You
be.
and you were my first legal job in law school. I learned a lot working at Parker Rosen, what it was then called, and it's really fun to be here. I've been a listener for many years of the show, and I guess I've called in a few times, but now I'm a guest.
Yeah, and it's always been a pleasure having you call in from the West Coast out there. I think California is still a part of the continental United States and a part of the Union. Yeah, at least for now.
The economic engine of this union, in fact.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about AI today,
Yeah.
but it's not just being built in Minneapolis; it's also being built here in San Francisco, in the foothills of Silicon Valley, and I think we're all better off for it.
Oh my, Minneapolis and California all in one breath. That is tough to take. All right. So let's talk a little about AI. First, how would you describe it? What is it, and where does it sit in our future as we sit here now?
Well, there's a lot of directions we could go, but I think it's probably not controversial to say this is the biggest technological revolution, not only of our lifetime, but for many generations. I mean, what we're about to see with AI may be bigger than any industrial revolution we've ever seen. We're talking about superhuman intelligence. You know, you think about today the a
Let
billionaire.
me just give a brief intro that I forgot to talk about that also relates to the Humphrey Institute and when I was there. Harlan Cleveland was the dean of the Humphrey Institute back then. He was a nationally renowned policy expert, and he talked about back then. This was in the mid '80s. How there was going to be a revolution in the world, and it's called the information revolution. And he who controls information and knows how to use it quickly and most efficiently and effectively will have all the power and authority. And nobody knew what he was really talking about. At least I didn't know what he was talking about. I mean, think about it now. The computer was just coming online to massive use. And so what you're talking about is another generation, at least, beyond the information revolution.
That's probably true, or an extension of it.
Extension, yeah.
What's unique about this wave is the scale, the magnitude of it, and the speed of it. So we're not just talking about, something that augments knowledge workers, which we'll talk a lot about, I think, today, what we're seeing AI do today, but it's also physical in the world. I mean, we should have a real conversation about robotics and autonomous vehicles and healthcare in domains that have largely been not touched by previous waves. So I think the scale and magnitude of it is unique, and in a way that changes the whole tone of this conversation. So one thing we can talk about, I think, later today is what is the impact of AI on jobs and the economy. And the trope is we shouldn't be afraid of technological waves because of this idea of creative destruction. We're going to create more jobs than we destroy, and we've seen this over and over. But with AI, it gets uncomfortable because the speed of it is so fast and the scope of it is so significant. It's not just kind of entry level workers or low skilled workers or white collar workers. It's kind of everything, everywhere, all at once. And I take a very optimistic view, and I don't think this will map to left and right politics. I think we're in a very different conversation. We can talk about that too. So I'm generally quite optimistic, but also not naive to the fact that this is going to be really uncomfortable for a lot of people, and it's going to change the world order in a big way if it already hasn't.
So, where do we sit with AI today? Who are the leaders? How is it being used? Give a little description. Most people have a sense of it, but they may not fully understand.
So let's start by talking about kind of the US AI landscape right now. We talk about kind of four companies that are the leading frontier labs. There's OpenAI, They just raised $122 billion yesterday at an 800 and I think $60 billion valuation. So they've
Wow.
been seen as the leader. They created ChatGPT. Most Americans have used it. Much of the world has used it. They're doing about 25 billion a year in revenue. There's this company Anthropic, which was a spin out. The founders spun out of OpenAI. They created a product called Claude. Claude was doing about 1 billion a year in revenue last year. This year, they're 20 times that run rate. They're going to do, probably 20 billion and growing. 20 times revenue growth year over year. That's something. Most Americans have not heard of Anthropic. There's Google, which has more money than all of these companies. They actually invented the AI tech, but have been very slow to roll it out. But they're starting to catch up. And then there's Elon Musk with X. Amazingly, Elon was actually a co-founder of OpenAI. Had a fight with OpenAI about control and decided to start his own company, X. X just filed for a $1.7 trillion IPO, and they've got a chatbot called Grok. And so when we think about the AI race in the US right now, we're talking about these four companies, these frontier labs, building these really large models. And what we've seen is we've thought about these models as LLMs. An LLM, a large language model, think of it as a brain in a jar. It's just a brain. You give it text and it gives you text back. That's how most Americans think about AI. It's just it's almost like a better Google. But the shift we're seeing now is into agents. We're now seeing these models are getting eyes and ears, and they can browse the web. They can actually do the tasks that humans would do. And that's the shift we're seeing right now in Silicon Valley. There was this amazing blog post back in February from someone who said, this feels like COVID again. It feels like something is happening here that very few people really understand outside of the small bubble, but soon they all will. And I would agree with that sentiment. It feels like COVID. The world's about to change. It's growing extra linearly. It's growing exponentially. And it all has to do with the use of agents.
What do you think the impact is? By the way, just as an aside, as you were talking, I was thinking about, what was the last AI search I did? And it was, what is the most corrupt country in the world? And I scrolled down the answer of it to number 180 on the list, and lo and behold, it was Somalia. Who would have thought? Okay, so that's what AI gives us, the ability to assess and to draw conclusions that go beyond what you see and believe in any event just from living. But if AI is so enormous, I mean, $1.7 trillion. I mean, is this going to be the masses and these few puppeteers up here who control this technology?
Well, that's the debate right now, right? So there's, we could talk about kind of I think this debate, we want to move past kind of the left and right. And the
Right.
question we have to ask is, do we think that AI is going to create abundance, or do we not? And so I guess I'm not answering your question directly, but my view is still largely that AI is going to create it's a deflationary force, as technology always is. And so do we have to worry about kind of a few companies with a concentrated position that can impact not just what we see, but how we actually think, right? We're talking about intelligence that's so cheap we can't even meter it. That's what AI is offering at scale. But the question is, does it concentrate wealth into the few, or does it create abundance for all? And what I think we're seeing today is actually creating abundance for all of us. There's a whole bunch of areas of AI that I'm crazy excited about. I think you probably will be too. You look at autonomous vehicles. The leader right now is Waymo, which is currently a division of Google, but they're going to go public. It sounds like in the next year or two, we'll see. They gave, I think, something like 15 million driverless rides last year. If you live in San Francisco, it certainly feels like a quarter of the cars you see on the road are Waymos driving around with little lidars on top. They released their safety stats last year. They had a 92% lower crash rate than human drivers. They
Wow.
had 85% lower crash rate with bicyclists that resulted in injuries. When you consider that the number one cause of death for young people is motor vehicle accidents, the number one cause of spinal cord injuries, something like 40,000 Americans die a year in car crashes. If we deployed autonomous vehicles across the country, we'd have way more efficient use of our vehicles. We could hopefully chop that number down by a big margin. I mean, this is more than homicides and a whole bunch of things combined. You worry about gun violence. We can eliminate this with a much bigger number with autonomous vehicles. So if you do that, you save billions in healthcare costs. You probably drive down the cost of insurance and car ownership. I think this is creating abundance. We haven't even talked about self-driving trucks, which probably has even bigger impact. Self-driving trucks don't need to take breaks. You have fewer accidents. You have higher capacity. Auroras.
You don't have people who don't speak English behind the wheel.
Well, what I'm focused on is what this does for the consumer. So one of the biggest costs of the goods we buy is the cost to truck it to us. And so anyhow, we can talk about the kind of social concerns, but I come from this as a perspective of insane abundance. And I think that's really net good for the country.
All right. So a net abundance. So let me ask you something that's always bothered me. My knee-jerk reaction to advancement is skepticism. I like,
You're a conservative, Andy. That's your job, right?
I mean, it's true. It's true. The whole word progressive makes me kind of curl up, but for several reasons, but not least of which is it's this kind of newfangled, wait a minute, the way I've been doing it, look at what I have here. This is my pencil sharpener, and it works fantastically. It's the crank old Boston pencil sharpener. What do we need? The electric, you pick up the pencil, you stick and it just works in there. All right. So I'm looking at the advancement, and isn't AI simply taking information, all the information, far more than has ever been gathered before, organizing it and using it as directed by the human being? It is not giving nuance or emotion yet. Am I correct, or have we reached the point where nuance and emotion is now being incorporated into the computer?
Well, I guess it depends what you mean by that. So there are two different ideas. Nuance, definitely. I actually think AI has a capability for nuance far beyond what most humans can do.
Oh
AI
boy.
does not find work tedious. AI does not need the data to be structured. So AI can handle, hundreds of dimensions of nuance that you or I would gloss over. And I think that's what makes it so incredibly powerful. I mean,
Yeah, but maybe there's reason to gloss over it.
well, maybe you can tell it to gloss over, but the way
Okay.
I would say is it's giving you superhuman productivity. And this is why it's so scary. So, artists don't like, a lot of artists who've been spent, a generation learning how to paint don't like that you can create the same visuals with an image model in seconds. In the same way that when DJs came around and made music with synthesizers and computer programs, it offended a generation of musicians who learned how to play strings.
So could
So
you have the original Van Gogh and an AI Van Gogh version of that original, and the most expert of expert human being looking at him would not be able to tell?
Well, could you build could AI create an image that looked so much like something Van Gogh would have made that it could fool an expert? Certainly. Um, do you, if it, look, we can talk about sort of in a similar vein what we're seeing with deepfakes today. They are
Yeah.
so. I've been watching with the Iran war. They are so convincing. I think that the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, tweeted out a picture of an explosion that came from a video game that looked real. It wasn't even AI. It looked so convincing. The Iranians have been posting, nonsense of AI edited maps showing kind of attacks on U.S. Forces that didn't happen. But I think we're there. One thing we're seeing that I think hasn't broken out is the voice models. I have a machine here running what's called OpenClaw, which is a term that's very popular in the tech circles. And it's a software program that lets me have a continuous AI agent running on my own computer. And I had it clone my voice, and it was pretty convincing. And I've told kind of folks your age, I said you're going to get a call someday from one of your kids, and it's going to sound like your kid. It's going to be damn convincing that it's your kid, and they're going to tell you they need help, they need money, they need you to
Yeah.
do something, and it is you. It's going to sound like your kid, and it was a very well crafted clone of their voice sent out by a bot trying to defraud you.
Don't
So
you
I think
find that dangerous?
incredibly dangerous. No, this is if it's as I said, the frame is we're amplifying human productivity by orders of magnitude, and like you heard in the Humphrey School, that can be for good or for bad. Look at what we saw in the Iran war. I know you've talked a lot about this war. This was the first time we've seen the U.S.'s AI capabilities deployed in a U.S. kinetic engagement, right? So the U.S. in 2017, I think the commanders of the Pentagon thought, holy crap, we have Silicon Valley lapping us in AI. The average consumer had better models on their phone than some of the commanders did in the battlefield. This doesn't feel right. And they actually partnered with Google to build this system. I think it's called Project Maven, which would allow kind of real time intelligence gathering and building lists of target. Interesting, Google actually backed out of the deal because 3,000 Google employees wrote a letter saying we're not comfortable with our work being used for the military, which is kind of mind blowing if you consider that so much of the values we have here need to be protected against regimes overseas we don't agree with. But we can talk about that if you'd like. In any case, the project's evolved. I think Palantir came in and took over the contract, and we saw a brief glimpse of it being used in the Iran war, where the U.S. struck 1,000 targets in the first 24 hours, where you have lists of targets being generated on the fly, giving the military the ability to respond within minutes to threats. The U.S. military reportedly gave some of this tech to the Ukrainians to help them better spot Russian launchers. And there was this amazing story where the U.S. picked up a Russian launcher, told the Ukrainians, and within 18 minutes had it destroyed. These are capabilities you just simply could not do without AI. The Israelis have a similar system we can talk about. They've got a few systems they've used, and they said that they can get to 70 times the productivity with kind of an agent-based target collection tool than with a human intelligence analyst. This is changing the nature of what it means to defend the U.S. and be productive. So, do you believe? And I think I know your take, but do you believe a military with those capabilities is net good or is it net bad? It also means that the mistakes can happen a lot faster. We had this terrible strike on a school in Iran, which is super tragic if true. Over 100 young people were killed. Nobody wants to see this in a war. We don't know if AI was part of it, but if we find out that this was a mistake, from the AI system, how do we think about that?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you know that our show talks about Israel quite often. I harangue and have now even more openly attacked Tucker Carlson and his view. Why should we support Israel? What has Israel ever done for us? Has Israel been beneficial in the tech industry for things we're using here in the United States?
Well, I think Israel is such an outlier in AI. It almost you have talked for years, Andy, about Israel being the startup nation, and we all know the story of Israel's Signal Intelligence Unit 8200 producing like the best and brightest minds in technology. But even in AI, Israel punches above its weight in ways none of us even realized. NVIDIA has a huge center in Israel, and Jensen, I think just a few weeks ago, talked about kind of their unwavering commitment to it. The Israeli military developed a few systems. We've heard, this is just me reading public reports, so I can only go off what we've seen, but they've built their own kind of project Maven. They call it Lavender and Gospel. I think it's Hasbara in Hebrew, where they can dynamically build targets. They're a tiny military that has shown the world what they can do with AI to expand their scale. And outside of the military,
And the
I
U.S. gets great advantage from that.
it certainly sounds that way. And outside of military alone, I think the United States, I think Israel's number three in the entire world in venture money. The amount of capital pouring into kind of Israel deep tech startups across cybersecurity, AI, defense, it's unmatched. So I think the rest of the world looks to Israel's AI prowess with kind of envy. One, we talked about autonomous vehicles. An Israeli startup called Mobileye, which was acquired and then spun out again. They were really pioneers of some of the computer vision work and underlying tech needed in autonomous vehicles. And I think the list goes on and on.
Yeah, amazing. And we can educate Tucker a little bit. And now, a word from our sponsors.
Are you a business owner? Are you losing sleep because you feel your partner isn't carrying their weight, or because you no longer share the same vision or values? Are you no longer comfortable going into your own office? Are you walking on eggshells in the company you built? This is Chris Daniels, founding partner of Parker Daniels Keyboard LLC, a premier litigation law firm headquartered in downtown Minneapolis. For more than 30 years, I've specialized in business litigation and have helped hundreds of business owners resolve troubling business disputes. As a former certified public accountant, I get to the heart of the dispute, including financial issues. Business divorce can be messy, time-consuming, and costly, but doing nothing can cost you a lot more. Not just money, but emotionally, physically, and in your personal life. If you and your business partner no longer see eye to eye, and you're eager to take a proactive approach and make a change, please call me at 612-355-4100 and schedule a consultation. Or visit our website at www.parkerdk.com.
Looking to reduce your tax liability and grow your portfolio? Consider Texas-based Texacoma Resources. They have been delivering results for over 40 years in energy investments. Investors may benefit with strategic advantages like depreciation, depletion, and drilling, but should consult their tax advisors for their specific situation. Call True North Investment at 612-968-3442 to learn more. That's True North Investment, 612-968-3442. Texacoma Energy that works for you. All right. So what does it look like going forward on the horizon? If you were going to predict based on the direction that we are headed, what does the world look like in the AI world look like in 10 years? And it may well be even, much shorter period of time than that. But in 10 years, what does it look like? What can we be expecting? What can we do to get ready?
Well, one way is to invert the question. So we talk about where we're going with AI. Where don't we see AI really changing everything about our day-to-day life? That's a much tougher question. And I'm actually curious your take on that. I could riff. What I'll tell you is that here's things we know is happening right now. So we know, let's go back to autonomous vehicles. We know that I think Waymo is going to add something like 20 cities this year, including Minneapolis. We know that autonomous vehicles will almost certainly take over the vast majority of driving. I mentioned this company, Aurora. I was part of their IPO. I'm really proud of that company. They have 200 trucks they're going to have running by the end of the year. So between trucking and cars, I think it's kind of looked like the world pre and post Uber, except now they're going to be self-driving. And I don't know if many Americans will be buying their own cars in a few years when you can just get these cheap, reliable, on-demand rides.
Well, what do you
So
do? You take your phone, you've got your credit card in there, you take your phone, you plug in where you want to go, and it gives you the number of the vehicle you need to get in, you go.
Something like that, sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's a vehicle. I think healthcare is a great example. Many presidents have tried and failed to bring down the cost of healthcare, and AI may be the reason we can do it.
What about legal?
Legal is what is, other than coding, I think legal is the second fastest field adopting AI right now.
Yeah.
You're a lawyer. I was trained as a lawyer.
Yeah.
We all worry about legal jobs, but
We're
I think
using it big time, and we're also being very careful to check everything that is done, because you submit things to the court, you can get sanctioned like that. You can have your bar license taken if you do not check AI. And there's even some judges that issue rules that say there will be no AI use in this case.
Right. And I think even look at the areas that have typically built strong union support, like education. I think it's going to really challenge this model. We continue to see paper after paper showing that AI produces better outcomes. Now, my view is it's kind of AI plus a teacher, AI plus human, but we'll see how long that lasts. And so I think a lot of the entrenched power centers, healthcare and education and transportation, are going to be really challenged over the next kind of 4 or 5 years when you can outperform by adding AI. That really hurts jobs. Um, I think the real question is, how do we look at the global chessboard? So the biggest question I have is, will this kind of abundance camp or the decline camp win? And I really don't know. And there are so many examples in history where the decline camp won. I mean, look at the Ottoman Empire, which discovered the printing press and threw it away, and cut themselves off for knowledge for years. We've seen this over
Yeah.
and over in history where, very, very smart people said this is going too fast. One thing to pay attention to is US versus China. I think this is something where you got to thank the Trump administration, regardless of your politics, and how they're approaching it. The Biden approach to AI regulation was, let's focus on the risks and let's build reporting requirements. It was onerous. You've seen mostly blue states come together with a lot of kind of patchwork regulations. California's been pretty bad. There's a bill in Colorado and New York. And the Trump team came out and said, we're not doing this. We want a national framework designed to accelerate AI. They put out an executive order last fall that was pretty impressive, followed it up with a framework. And they said the Commerce Department's going to tell us about problematic regulations. They're going to build a DOJ task force to sue states that try to preempt federal laws, or that try to, conflict with federal laws that would burden interstate commerce. And you've seen them come and say, we are going to make sure you can build data centers and build electricity. If you
You know,
look at what the Chinese are doing, particularly around power, we need to heed this as a wake up call. We're going to need a lot more electricity and a lot more compute power, or we're going to lose our ability to compete.
you know, uh, thinking about this and what we were talking about in terms of in the legal industry, the use of AI. A court case just came out, not as it relates to AI, but Section 230, and who can be held liable for putting, for addiction in our kids, for example. Is there risk related to AI and legal boundaries? Have you thought about that at all?
I mean, how could there not be, right?
Yeah.
So I think of AI as infrastructure. That's how we need as much infrastructure as we possibly can get. And I think we got to go fast, and we need to kind of remove all the roadblocks we have to build this infrastructure. But I think we need to go slower on things about AI in our elections, AI and surveillance, AI and children, because I don't think we know. We see paper after paper coming out showing just how bad social media is for the mental health of the adults and for kids. I think there's a bill, Marsha Blackburn sponsoring a bill that tries to create audit rules that would allow people to audit models for kind of political bias. Now, that's a slippery slope, to be clear, but that's got to be part of the conversation, because this is intelligence. This is not just Google. This is intelligence.
The
This is how companies
Silicon
think.
Valley tech guy citing Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee.
This is not left right. And
I know it isn't, but I love it. I love it.
that's
Coming together.
look, I don't think, I think if you look at the data, any quote unquote progressive should be pretty disappointed with how blue states have performed on creating abundance for people. Blue states have higher housing costs. They don't let you build anything. They add regulations. It's not a good look. But I don't think the Democrats have a monopoly on blocking important infrastructure. I think it goes to both sides, and I think that's the honest conversation.
It certainly does. Tell me, before we started, you mentioned that you want to be a part of this burgeoning revolution. And how are you going to do that? You were talking about boot camp.
Oh, well, I've been out here investing in AI companies, working with a whole bunch of existing companies who are adopting AI. And I've gotten a lot of requests from people like you to say, "Hey, Dan, I'm really interested in these things. Help me. I want to figure it out." And so I grew up in Minneapolis, and what I decided we're going to do is there's a handful of kind of my peers here in Silicon Valley, and we're going to have some boot camps because I don't think this knowledge needs to just be confined to this bubble. And so we're calling it Agents Intensive, like an agent, plural, Agents Intensive. And these are 2-day programs. We're going to take some Silicon Valley founders and kind of AI technologists and fly them out to Minneapolis and New York and other parts of the country. And we're going to kind of go crazy deep and hope that we can red pill people on AI. Because I don't, there's this great line that AI won't take your job, but somebody using AI will. And I think for anyone who's running a company or who's trying to figure out how to build their career, knowing how to use these tools like we do is going to be pretty helpful. So we're calling it Agents Intensive. You can go to agentsintensive.com. We'll post dates. This is something that we're excited about doing.
So agents, AGENTS, intensive.com.
That's right. I hope you'll come, Andy. We'll show
yeah,
you how to build an autonomous Andrew that you can text anytime. One of the most amazing things that people don't realize, so where we've seen the most adoption, and I'm going to challenge you to this, is coding. I'm not a programmer, Andy. You're sure as shit not a programmer. But what we're finding now is people like you and me can code. 40% of the code posted to GitHub, which is the #1 coding repository in the world.
Yeah.
40% is AI generated. And I think that number actually would be much higher if you counted it properly. And so what we're finding is that people like you, Andy, and anyone who comes to our bootcamp can write their own software. There was a story of a guy in Canada a tech CEO who got an MRI done, and they hand him the DVD, and he can't read it, and the radiologist report hasn't come back, and he used AI to code himself the reader that reads MRI files. There are thousands of slices, and he creates this program to read the MRI and to upload the images to an AI model, and he got a full diagnosis before a radiologist even opened his file. That's the kind of stuff that anyone can do, and I want to show you how to do it.
So, let's put up that website again. Everyone should go to it. Agents Intensive, and I may well attend your boot camp because I took a course once. I can't remember when it was. It was way back at the very beginning of computers, and not at the very beginning, but when they became Steve Jobs out there in the market. And it was on coding, and I was in and out one course. That was it, but I kind of enjoyed it. Found it interesting. 0101, that sort of thing.
Right. Well, you don't have to do 01s anymore. But let me ask you, Andy, where do you fall on all this? So I'm deep in this. I could riff and talk about all the good things I'm seeing and the bad things I'm seeing, because there are. But Andy, are you afraid or are you optimistic?
Well, I gotta say I'm concerned, but I'm a bit of a curmudgeon. I'm skeptical about newfangled things and ideas, and oftentimes because they have great intentions, but it's the unintended consequences that become so difficult. And when money is involved, it will drive the result, and so often abuse is where money is made. Or overdoing it from a good, productive consequence for society into something abusive and destructive and dangerous can be, a very small margin. And it can also, drive you into oblivion ultimately. It, in part, is what has happened, I would say, social media, very good things about it, but TikTok, that ain't so good. I mean, it's just not good. And the addictive quality of it, et cetera. But that, of course, made a lot of people a lot of money. And so it's going to continue, and it's going to continue driving us off the cliff. And I'm worried that will be the same result in technology of AI. But, if we have smart politicians putting in place smart social policy laws and rules and regulations, we might be able to avoid that. But when is the last time we had smart politicians able to do that? It's been a long, long time. And if that's what I'm relying on, that ain't a good picture, really. However, yesterday, I was lucky enough to happen to be in front of a TV at the time when Artemis went not to the moon, but around the moon. Isn't there yet, but the blast off occurred yesterday in the launch. And it was really exhilarating. I thought, oh, I'm going to watch. No, I had an overwhelming sense of pride. I had some great positivity. I really viewed it as something that stands clear and above abuses in what I just described. What are your thoughts on space exploration and the technology that we're seeing there?
I mean, who could be against this? Look, Elon Musk has become a controversial figure because he became political. Again, if you believe my frame that the debate is between abundance and decline, this is a guy who's bringing the internet to the world. I flew to San Francisco a couple of days ago on a flight with Starlink. Have you tried Starlink on a plane yet, Andy?
No, I haven't. What's it about?
Starlink. So the reason SpaceX can command a, $1.7 trillion valuation is their satellite business, and they've launched thousands of satellites that are delivering high speed internet. I mean, internet that is probably faster than most Americans have in their home to anywhere in the world. You can get on an airplane. You could stream YouTube. You could play video games with low latency. I was getting 300 megabits of internet. That's very fast internet on a plane. And so the fact that Elon's vision to bring us to Mars, who knows? But the intermediate step, the part before going to Mars, is pretty damn bullish, pretty damn exciting. I'm very bullish on it. So, in fact, Amazon's trying to kind of follow in their footsteps with their programs called Leo. Delta Airlines just announced that they're going to incorporate Leo, but Leo is, I don't think they even have 1% of the coverage of Starlink. So it's pretty inspiring. It's a fun time to be alive.
Well, yeah, and the visionary quality of Elon Musk, second to none, and it's hard for anyone to dispute that. You can like him, dislike him.
I think we should say we need to get more Elon Musks.
Yeah,
I mean, we need an Elon.
exactly.
Look, I'll bring it back to electricity. One of the biggest problems we have, I think, is an energy crisis. We're seeing with the Iran war, we're dependent on fossil fuels. I don't know why fossil fuel dependence is a left-right issue. It shouldn't be, right? It should not. This is an abundance or decline issue, right? The Democrats block fuel production. The Republicans block renewables. This is ridiculous. If we look what's happening in China, the China electrical grid is 3 times the size of ours. We're not really adding capacity, and they're adding massive capacity. We're just replacing old coal plants. And there's no society in the world, there's no country in the world that's wealthy and has high energy prices. And so, Elon, when he started Tesla, he kept talking about, a sustainable energy future. I think we need more of that now. There's a pipeline, they're called SMRs, small modular reactors, that I think every American should know about. Google the term if you don't. And these are tiny football field size nuclear power plants that are cheap to build. That we can deploy nuclear all over the country. It's renewable, there's no emissions, and the energy's cheap. Right now, the United States pays twice per kilowatt hour for electricity that China does. This is not sustainable. We can't have this. So we need more Elon Musk to say enough of the government bureaucracy. We're going to build things that massively improve the standard of living for us all. And if we don't, we will decline, like we're seeing in many parts of the world.
Yeah, let me tell you, you quickly move from Elon Musk to Donald Trump. He's such a polarizing figure, which interferes with some of the great ideas, frankly, that he has. They're practical, they're down to earth, they are focused, they create efficiencies and effectiveness that make people's lives better. And the fact that he came up with it, or he's driving it, creates great polarization, and it undermines sound public policy ideas, and it's simply a shame he brings it on himself and on all of us. I think for sure, but it is a shame. Uh, I just wanted to close today by getting kind of your perspective as somebody in the tech world, how we might start to see the education surrounding technology um, start to keep up with technology. I mean, yeah, there are people like you who know this at the cutting edge, but there are so many who don't, and it's because we're not teaching it. We're always lagging. We're behind the masses, those that go to college or somewhere trade school, whatever it might be, simply are not uh, learning this as a part of their lexicon, as a part of their day to day life, like they should be. How's that going to change?
It's a good question. The issue is it seems that the technology is moving faster than the people who teach it, right? And computer science curriculum that was designed a couple of years ago can't keep up with the pace of LLM development with the new architecture we're seeing. Here's my view, and it actually, I'll take your point and I'll add a few more to it, which is what would you tell the average person? How do you, if you're a parent today, how do you kind of, tee your child up for success? I think because we're leveling the playing field, because anybody has the power of the world's best lawyer in their pocket. The question is, do you have agency? We want to raise a generation of people who have high agency, who think they can solve any problem. That's kind of a lesson of Elon Musk. I mean, what the hell did he know about rockets and all these things? He taught himself. AI lets you teach yourself. I'm going to go do
Yes.
this AI boot camp, but what do I know? You don't need me. I'll help you, but you don't need me. You can do it yourself. And that's what we want to get to, is high agency. It
I
may be
love,
why we don't need the college system that we have today.
yeah, we may not. And what about the impact of AI? And, pretty soon it won't be a professor, standing up there. It'll just be an AI course that's probably already happened, certainly. And uh, it, I don't know. My knee jerk reaction is to be very concerned and to throw cold water on it. But as I think of it more, there are some very positive uses. And let's put up the website again. Dan Garon, thank you so much for joining us on the Andrew Parker Show. This has been fascinating, illuminating, and really something that has got to get us all thinking and get us all engaged. Agentsintensive.com. That's agentsintensive.com. Go to the website, sign up for the boot camp. From the moment that you walk in and then the moment that you walk out, you'll be a different person and you'll know a lot more, and it'll head you down a path that may change your life. Agentsintensive.com. Dan Garon, thank you for joining us on the Andrew Parker Show.
Thanks, Andy.
Go to theandrewparkershow.com. That is theandrewparkershow.com. Start with andrewparkershow.com and visit what some refer to as an award-winning website. It is quite a good one. And 470 episodes down the lane, you'll have quite a bit to do at theandrewparkershow.com in addition to subscribing, following, and liking. Oh boy, until next time, please be kind to your neighbor. For more Smart Plain Talk, go to theandrewparkershow.com. Learn about all of your listening and viewing options. And remember, all the great things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word: freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, hope. This episode of The Andrew Parker Show is sponsored by Parker Daniels Keyboard and True North Private Investments. Mark Twain once quipped, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. When you are lied about and it spreads, the resulting mayhem and destruction can be, and often is, disastrous." Hi, this is Andrew Parker, co-founder of the Parker Daniels Keyboard Law Firm. I recently handled a high-profile defamation lawsuit on behalf of a luxury home real estate agent whose business was decimated by falsehoods spread about him. After nearly 2 years of litigation and 2 weeks of trial, the jury came back with a verdict of more than $2 million for our client. Parker Daniels Keyboard. We litigate cases, we try cases, and we win cases. With a record of excellence in achieving extraordinary results, Parker Daniels Keyboard lawyers have consistently won huge verdicts for its clients in the areas of defamation, civil rights violations, regulatory battles, and intellectual property theft. For wise counsel and winning results, contact us at Parker Daniels Keyboard, premier law firm in downtown Minneapolis. Looking to reduce your tax liability and grow your portfolio? Consider Texas-based Texacoma Resources. They have been delivering results for over 40 years in energy investments. Investors may benefit with strategic advantages like depreciation, depletion, and drilling, but should consult their tax advisors for their specific situation. Call True North Investment at 612-968-3442 to learn more. That's True North Investment, 612-968-3442. Texacoma Energy that works for you.